Approximately 10 days ago, I made a rather controversial video on Warhammer 3, stating that the reason we had not seen actual gameplay since the survival event back in May was because the game was not at a point to show it off to the public, which was also my reason for the delay into early 2022. On equal measure with that was my concern for the Siege rework that had been repeatedly pushed back. One of the areas that Creative Assembly was toting around as a massive shift in how we approach this area of the game. Well, in a move I honestly expected to have come sooner, on Monday, October 11th, CA released their Siege Rework video, a 5-minute long, gameplay-filled overview of the vast number of huge sweeping changes that will completely revolutionize how sieges operate in Warhammer 3. At least that's how they marketed it between the video and the accompanying blog. In today's video, I want to address both the video and the blog, as both are needed to more accurately see the changes made. And there are indeed some really positive, good steps forward. There are also a couple bad ones and some pretty ugly ones that, while they can be fixed and polished for release, really just paints this massive Siege rework into more of a really solid revamp, adding things in from previous Total War games without really doing anything that could truly transform sieges in this game and in future ones. So without further ado, let's dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Warhammer 3's Siege Siege Rework. First, we're going to watch the Siege Rework video so that the entire thing is fresh on everyone's minds as I get into the details of it all. Timestamps are available here, so you are perfectly fine to skip ahead and go to exactly where you want to go.
Sieging a settlement should not be an easy undertaking. Total War Warhammer 3 has reworked how sieges work. With new ways of attacking as well as defending, every inch taken will cost dearly. Settlement maps are now larger, and we've introduced more variety of maps than in previous games. With the fall of the Turtle Gate, Miao Ying moves her army from the Snake Gate to Wei Jin in an attempt to bolster the city's defenses and drive Siege out of Cathay. Wei Jin, capital of the Celestial Dragon Empire, is a 3-walled fortress and a testament to Cathay's architectural brilliance. When defending, walls are the first defense against an attacking army, but by no means the last. We now have the option to turn the streets into a bloody maze. Using supplies, we can build towers, barricades, and traps. Prepare and plan your defense, but never rest easy. The first object for any attacker to overcome is the wall-mounted towers. Unfortunately for us Siege invaders, towers now have wider capture areas, so defenders don't need to be as close for them to be active. This means we can spread our docked units across a larger area and pepper the invaders with arrows, bullets, and artillery on their approach. The might of Grand Cathay isn't enough to keep Siege from breaching the walls. The walls will soon fall. It's time to fall back to our secondary positions within the city. Our defense now lies with our barricades, traps, and towers. We'll need a new currency introduced in Warhammer 3, supplies. We'll start the defense with a base number of supplies and can gain more during combat by holding locations around the settlement. Minor supply, key building, and victory points. These key points have pre-designated build locations for construction. Once a barricade or tower is constructed, it can be dismantled for a refund of supplies and rebuilt elsewhere. But keep in mind, construction and dismantling is a lengthy process. Barricades and towers are destroyed if their health reaches 0, or if the supply, building, or victory point they're attached to is taken by the attackers. If this occurs, your supplies are not refunded. It's worth noting that whilst attackers can capture points, they cannot build barricades or towers. Rather than a messy brawl in the streets, Warhammer 3's sieges are about defenders controlling the flow of battle, using a settlement's architecture to plan and execute layered fallbacks and hardpoints, where they can chip away at an attacker's forces. To this end, settlements have become multi-leveled with bridges and upper tiers that cross over streets, giving ranged units more opportunities to shine. A good many of these bridges and overlooks are dockable like the primary walls, giving our soldiers all the buffs and benefits of any other docked unit. In sieges, both the attacker and defender's role are tactically more challenging and more rewarding. Settlements in Warhammer 3 have been designed with more open areas and strategic avenues to hide troops in. The avenues are the perfect ambush spot, making flanking and devastating charges a more viable tactical strategy. In overview, Warhammer 3's sieges offer a diverse array of fresh settlements to overcome and protect. They allow defenders to prepare for a new kind of battle occurring after the attackers have taken the primary walls. They add a new currency to manage and spend on fortifying defensive fallback positions with barricades, towers, and traps which are used to further repel invaders. They allow for a multi-layered experience where units can be docked to overlooks and walls within the settlement itself, and encourages real-time reorganizing of defenses to adapt to an ever-changing battle. All of these features, coupled with dynamic new settlement designs, make for challenging and satisfying sieges packed with highs, lows, and phenomenal visuals. Wei Jin has fallen, but the forces of Siege will struggle to reach the celestial city above. The Dragon Emperor is safe for now. Even so, his daughter has barely managed to escape with her life. To Nangao she travels.
I want to start with the good things, well, because that's the order in which I'm supposed to follow it in these types of videos, but I also want to start positively, and there are indeed some very positive things to talk about with this Siege rework. Also, as a heads up, I will purposefully be switching between rework and revamp, so you have an idea what I personally define as both throughout the entire video. First, I want to talk about the scale of Wei Jin and the overall rework of settlements. This major settlement is indeed one honkin' beast of a city. It looked significantly larger just from the initial shots, but the unit scale at 2 minutes into the actual video just shows how truly massive this particular city is going to be, and looks to be the standard not just for Cathay, but perhaps the dwarves as well, as they feature a more defensive style of settlement development that is representative of their faction relevant playstyles. And this appeals to the larger picture of how settlements are being reworked. Both the blog and the video state that there is now a larger variety in settlement types than in any previous Warhammer game, both between the different factions and within the factions themselves. Dwarves in Cathay, for instance, are epic walled and built into the mountains. Kislev, however, builds to create tight, dense cities, and the Skaven and Greenskins are much more ramshackled and less defensible. But apparently nothing compares to the variations we're going to see between the different Chaos factions. Digging into the details of the settlements are two bigger features. First, a move towards larger terrain elevations within the maps, to the point of adding bridges across certain expanses, giving ranged units the opportunity to leverage that height advantage, and adding spots throughout those upper levels to attach ranged units as though they were walled parts of the city. Second, along with that, is more open terrain inside of the cities, giving the chance for some more tactical decisions in areas where more than one unit can take up the width of a space in combat. This piece of Siege Revamp, while huge to Warhammer without a doubt, isn't new to the Total War franchise. In fact, it's a rather huge selling point for Thrones of Britannia, a game that executed both of these ideas very well in particular sieges. The multi-stage tiered settlements in Thrones allowed you to post those archers on actual walls above your first tier walls, and in some larger settlements had ample space inside of them for nice smaller scale battles to commence. A piece I particularly enjoyed about the game. It will do the game a lot of good to have these features. I just want to mention that there are features we've had for a while now in other games, and I for one am glad still to see them get used in other franchises. Moving along, major settlements aren't the only ones getting a facelift. Minor settlements have been the bane of Warhammer's existence since it first launched, as minor settlements were just basic land battles. This is a move I never understood, considering the entire franchise doesn't operate this way, and a big part in why I can't fully enjoy Warhammer without using mods. Well, as of Warhammer 3, minor settlement battles are now actual siege-ish battles, where you fight in the streets of a small town rather than an open battlefield. This alone will make campaigns more meaningful and require an inkling of thought and strategy regarding these minor settlement battles. Again, something that's lacking currently. Both major and minor settlements will use the supply system, while also adding capture points in the maps that gives you different buffs or bonuses, giving some player choice in which areas they want to defend or focus their troops on once the walls fall, or don't fall in the case of minor settlements. I'm all for player choice in strategy games, and before the Shogun 2 10th anniversary mod was taken down, the capture point feature was my favorite part about sieges within that game. If I have to choose between defending a capture point that buffs my ranged troops or one that gives my entire army a defensive bonus, that's a great set of choices that will determine how I defend my settlements, which will also change depending on my army setup, the enemy army setup, and other factors of that sort every single time. Overall, this is a big step forward. CA's goal is to make sure that you will not run into the same major or minor settlement map twice, or if you do, it's spaced out far enough that you don't quite notice it as easily as you could in Warhammer 1 or 2. And speaking on those previous games, this Siege map variation is going to affect every faction across the board, which is definitely worthy of a rework label, but it still comes with a side of caution, as even when CA has toted map variations in the past, haven't quite delivered on that expectation. Even still, a positive trajectory regarding sieges that I approve of overall, and this part has me quite satisfied. The last major piece in this section is on the reworked Siege AI within Warhammer 3, and the improvements that Creative Assembly are implementing for them. They started by leaning heavily on 3K's Siege AI, which worked very well in my opinion, especially at higher difficulties. May God rest its soul, which worked very well in my opinion, especially at higher difficulties. The aforementioned capture point mechanic within Sieges is the perfect system to shape the AI into making better tactical choices, both in offense and in defense. In the case of offensive Siege AI, they focus on the areas of least resistance, utilizing flying units to whittle down your ranged units or keep your pesky cav units from wrecking their weaker ones. For defense, having these coded capture points lets the AI know when an objective needs defending or when it's more clearly overwhelmed, and gives them triggers to counter that attack or to withdraw entirely to a new part of the map. What should arise are more dynamic siege battles overall, where the Siege AI has the competence to understand and react appropriately to the situation at hand. This combined with better pathfinding would mean that any siege in Warhammer 3 would be decently harder regardless of the player's position of defense or offense. Again, this is a great step forward for sieges. I'm always going to applaud what game devs can do to improve in-game AI decisions, as it's always a stickler with Total War games. They've come a long way, and I'm glad to see they're utilizing successful AI from 3K, may God rest its soul, so in this area, if they pull it off, will indeed be a game changer for Warhammer 3. Now that we've covered the best parts of the Siege rework / revamp, for me personally anyways, it's time for me to move on to what I think is the not so great part, what I consider the bad stuff. Now I want to preface this section with a couple of notes. First, this is of course my opinion based on what I played previously in the survival battle event. I understand inside a settlement this system will operate slightly different, but overall my experience playing this aspect of the game gives me some insight into its execution. Second, anything under this bad section I'll constructively criticize, giving a possible path to fix why I think it's bad. Third, I do fully understand that Warhammer is a fantasy title, so the historically based game mechanics I'm going to talk about will not necessarily apply to a game where people can turn into dragons, a two-headed flamingo vulture flies around casting spells, or squat four-armed Mike Wazowskis run around looking to shank people. Keep these in mind. My biggest issue with the changes to Siege gameplay is the supply system. I was afraid that its use in survival battles was too wildly new to implement just for those sort of final boss battles in the realms of chaos, and those concerns were confirmed in this Siege rework video. To break it down quickly, sieges now have supplies that you can use to build walls and towers and traps throughout predetermined sections of your settlement. While you start with a base number of supplies, every kill the defender gets will tick up their number of supplies, allowing them to progressively continue to react to the developing situation at hand. As a whole, the supplies and barricade system is a positive step. Total War Attila had barricade options that made sieges at least a bit more strategic, as did Three Kingdoms, may God rest its soul. The ability to place down X number of temporary walls that force the enemy to reroute their troops or spend precious time sitting still while tearing them down is great, and I enjoy Attila and 3K Sieges because of that. What made it really strategic though was that you had a limited number of these barricades that had to be placed down before the battle began. If you forgot to place one before hitting start, sorry, you lost the chance to have that extra one. Beyond that though, it either rewarded or punished the player based on where they put them. If you block 2 of the 3 main avenues to a capture point, odds are the AI will funnel everyone down that open channel and you have an avenue of death at your fingertips. But if you placed your barricade somewhere random or remote, away from those main avenues, the AI would just bypass them, and suddenly your mistake could lead the way to more losses on your end and or a possible defeat. There were consequences, even if they were minor, to your pre-battle options with your barricade placement. That's what bugs me a lot with the current state of the supply system for sieges in Warhammer 3, based on what I saw in the video and what I played in the event. There are little to no consequences for when and where you put down barricades and towers. It takes a whopping 10 to 15 seconds to slap up a wall or build a tower, of which there is no build queue. And while the voiceover tries to make you think that's a long time, I see very few instances in which you'll not be able to get those up before even a charging melee unit would get to it. Now, what if you made a mistake or the AI reacts differently? All you have to do is tear down in 5 seconds. Get those supplies refunded and go build somewhere else and you're good. Or tear down the wall barricade to switch to a trap. Or choose instead to build a monument to buff the troops that the enemy is sending your way. In the space of a few clicks and enough supplies, I could theoretically completely tear down one section and fortify an entire other section on my map that the AI suddenly switched their troops to in less than 20 seconds. Which leads me to my next point, cheesing. Until the partners get their hands on actual siege build, we can't know how the AI will actually operate, and while I am optimistic that said AI has improved, I am also still slightly hesitant. Cheesing game mechanics within Total War, especially the Warhammer series, has become pretty dominant in order to succeed at higher difficulties. It's often too easy to force the AI to react exactly how you want, change their pathfinding operations, and kite all too effectively at the moment. I don't do that because I'm not great at that level of microing troops like a lot of other people are. With the supplies and barricade system we saw in the video, combined with the new addition of elevations, including bridges and other super defendable spots on the map, what I'm concerned about is that players will be able to cheese the holy heck out of even the improved AI in being able to build, destroy, and modify these barricades, playing what might evolve into a form of whack-a-mole against the enemy. As entertaining as that might be, to me, it takes out a deeper form of strategy that, at least I hope, Creative Assembly is trying to go for with this Siege rework. With the lack of consequence for poor player choice and a possible new minigame of whack-a-mole sieges in mind, I would now like to propose some very simple modifications to the supplies and barricade system. Number 1, increase the cost of walls and towers by a lot. If I start with 3,500 supplies and 20 barricades and tower slots, make things expensive enough that I only can build on maximum of 2/3 of these slots. Towers could be 750 to 1,000 supplies each, barricades upwards of 400 to 500 each. Do not allow me to build in every single slot at the beginning of the siege, regardless of my settlement level. If kills get supplies, make me be strategic in getting those kills. Number 2, building queues. I'll mention it again, with enough supplies, I could possibly fully kit out an entire section, 5 to 7 building slots at a single capture point in less than 20 seconds. I would be okay with that 10 to 15 second build time per slot if there was a build queue for that section. That way you actually have to think about the order in which you want to build them, rather than just make it about clicks per second. This isn't StarCraft. Number 3, increase deconstruct time. That lack of consequence is just a siege killer for me. It really bugs me. If you increase the deconstruct time from 5 seconds to say something like even 15 seconds, the player, like in number 2, would have to think about where they want to build and what could happen if that build choice is a mistake. What's the result here? A slower paced siege experience that rewards players for doing some forward thinking and planning and using long-term tactics instead of knee-jerk clicks per second strategizing. This still encourages a lot of player engagement, which I think is the ultimate goal for this rework anyways. Sieges are currently boring and monotonous in the series, but I think it would be a mistake to push in-the-moment reactions when some simple tweaks to the system proposed will make for a more organic approach even in this fantasy setting. Let me know your thoughts about these tweaks or what your reaction to the supply system is overall down in the comment section. I'd love to have a chat about what you think the solution is for this area of sieges. In the last of the three main sections, I want to go over the ugly things, of which there's only two, so it should be short and quick. These are disappointments in what I saw the Siege Rework video and in the blog. One of these can be fixed, the other is confirmed not to be coming to Warhammer at all. The first one is something I brought up in the last video, and it's now confirmed by both the video and the blog, and that's artillery will not be attachable to your outer walls or any other part of your city. Now let me clarify, this has never been a feature in any previous Total War game, at least not exactly. You have never been able to attach artillery that's part of your army onto the walls of any settlement. You have, however, been able to upgrade settlements to include siege artillery as part of the settlement itself, or at least as part of a fortress. Empire Total War had cannons sprinkled throughout its fortress walls. Attila had onagers, I believe Thrones did as well. This is honestly pretty disappointing to me, considering how they've made walls much deeper in some of these settlements. Space is 100% there, and not the reason they aren't on the walls. Maybe it's pathfinding, but it worked very well in previous games. I'm just not sure why CA won't do it, although I would love it if the Siege designer team would shed some light just for closure's sake. Now, the new elevations matter significantly more for your army's artillery, which is great, and perhaps that's their justification for it too. Even still, based on the video, buildings look like they're going to be a regular hindrance for positioning and accuracy of any artillery, even on those new elevated platforms, so I'm still not 100% sold that this is an acceptable departure from previous historical titles where walled artillery worked great. Another disappointment is that magic butt ladders are still in the game. I would have thought that as part of this massive rework, magic butt ladders would be removed as a part of that. What's more, every single unit that can use ladders, regardless of faction or even species, uses the exact same generic human wooden ladder and uses them the exact same way. Take the Mike Witowskis as the best example here. Since we used generic wood ladder 1 as the prop for this rather obscene chaos spawn, he's only able to use 2 of his 4 arms, making for a humorous meme-themed moment, but ultimately showing a big problem with the situation at hand. What other awkward situations are we going to experience because a unit has to be forced to use a standard that's not remotely fit to the creature? Also, have you noticed that in all 3 Cathay videos, we haven't seen a single piece of Tzeentch siege equipment? No battering rams, no towers, just the magic generic wood butt ladders. There are 2 solutions, one simpler and the other way more complex, but the second would truly revolutionize the siege mechanics. The simpler one is just faction unique ladders. Sure, that would mean Khorne units would slice up their bums, pulling out razor sharp weapon modified ladders, or Slaanesh. Actually, I don't want to know what they might pull out, nor how they might find that pleasurable. But anyways, faction unique ladders. You've got every other piece of siege equipment, just do a bit more to wrap it all up. The more complex option is to have units scale up the walls by themselves. Not 3 Kingdoms style of ninja hooks and ropes, may God rest its soul. More like the Great Wall movie style. How amazing would it be to have certain units able to just straight scale up the walls and get onto the top? The cinematics would be incredible and also completely horrifying at the same time. It'd mean more units to trigger the siege battles without equipment, but with the addition of monstrous units being able to take down sections of the walls and not just gates, which is a feature I'm 100% happy to hear about, it only makes sense to take that next step. Let units scale walls without equipment. The likelihood of this happening is super remote, I know, but man, I'd love to see it implemented. To wrap up this rather lengthy video, I want to give my overall thoughts on what we saw in the video and what we read in the blog. From a basic feature standpoint, this is indeed a large improvement over sieges in Warhammer 1 and 2. If I'm reading the room correctly, these mechanics are designed to make sure that sieges last longer, that you have to actually siege down a settlement for far longer than normal, which slows down the campaign. It keeps the player engaged during the battles and ensures that your siege experience is never really the same twice. And I think that it will certainly do all of those things, and I'm happy that the objective in that has at least been met. I'm more specifically excited to see these changes brought about to minor settlements, considering that minor settlement sieges are some of my favorite parts of the Total War franchise, and I pulled off the most heart-pounding defenses with these little guys. It's the execution of the mechanics themselves that I have concerns with, and back yet again to the marketing and hype surrounding it. It seemed like Sieges were getting a complete and total overhaul, a rebuilding from the ground up that would have lasting effects not just for this game, but for future ones. What we got were features put in that previous games have had for years, a system that promotes a CPM playstyle and looks very cheesable, and lots of things that weren't addressed the community has had some issues with. There are improvements across the board, but they're just that, improvements. They'll make Sieges better and more interesting, but I'm not floored. I guess my expectations were just too great. Positive change is positive though. 3 steps forward and 1 step back is still forward, and I am appreciative of that. And I hope that in the future, as things get closer, we get to see both Warhammer 3 factions and previous races shown off regarding the new mechanics, be it just in screenshots, a blog feature, or in another overview video showing progress to all factions overall. My head sits a little bit higher now than it did a week ago, so there's progress. And with that, the end of this video. Thank you very much for checking it out. Let me know your thoughts on everything I addressed in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed the video at any part, be sure to give it a thumbs up, sub to the channel, and turn on bell notifications. Be on the lookout for more Warhammer 3 coverage. This is Havoc, and I will see you in the next one.